Take your shopping experience to a private level. Are you looking for a specific toy in mind? Do you crave for something different with rave and positive reviews? Shop exclusively at kinkeinc.adultshopping.com. Receive unmarked packages and get 15% off your total order by typing in the code KEM 2020 at checkout. Need bulk items? Contact kinkemagazine@gmail.com for all of your bulk party item needs. And for everything else, be sure to visit kinkemag.com. Hey everyone, it's Marabelle Blue, and welcome to a new KEM Top Talk interviews and discussions. Today's guest is the most beautiful person that I know. She is just absolutely fantastic. And when you see her, and if you ever get a chance to meet her in person, like I want to meet her in person, I'm sure that you will be enamored. So, are you ready for today's guest? I am. She actually is also involved in the bigger than sex movement that King Lexa began. And that's how I had the pleasure to meet her in one of the drinking games that I was moderating. And that was fun now that I'm thinking about it. So let's welcome Sybilla. Woo!
Hi, Lady Marabella. How are you? It's nice
I
to meet
am
you.
good. I am good. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
I am so glad for this opportunity. And let's get started right from
Je
the
vous en
beginning.
prie. Allez, let's go.
Now, of course, when I was speaking and introducing you, I referred to you as she. Now, people may not know, once I flip it over and put the screens together to see you, there will be people that will say, what is Marabella talking about? So let's start from the beginning. Who are you? How did you come to be who you are right now? This beautiful person that's gracing us on our screen.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the introduction that way. So, my name is Sybilla Bakzaza. I am originally from Tamasra, from Morocco in English, or Maroc en français. And I identify as a gender fluid. And we will, of course, go over that. But to make a long story short, gender fluid is someone who presents as either female or male, and they tend to alternate between the two, as opposed to, say, your NB or your non-binary individuals, who can be either the presence of both or the absence of gender, that is to say, gender neutrality. So I share some things in common with your non-binaries, but in some ways I am very binary in the fact that I'm either a woman or a man. So that's who I am. And I could be considered by some to be pre-transition, and I will definitely be considering that over the next 5 years or so. And I've been on this journey for about 2.5, almost 3 years now.
Wow. Now, let me ask you a question, because I know that we had discussions about this previous to the questions. And then my mind just went completely blank. And this is the reason why I should have the questions in front of me. Oh, yes. Now I remember. When you were growing up and you were discovering that there was a different side to you, how did you research those sides? How did you go about your journey in discovering who you are and coming to be Sybilla, the person that we see in front of us?
So unlike some of my friends who have transitioned or are also gender fluid, I did not come into touch with knowing that there was a woman inside of me until about 3.5 to 4 years ago. So when I was a teenager, or when I was little, I did not have any identification or any awareness that I was female. So that came along a little bit later in life, right around the time of my second naval career. And I happened to be dating someone who, she had a dream. To make a long story short, she had a dream of this long-haired warrior, male warrior, and of course I have naturally long hair, who would, at the end of her dream, transition into this dark-haired war goddess. And I always was so amused by her dream. And I said, it's funny you should say that, because when I was 21, for a party, I cross-dressed. And she said, do you have a picture? And I showed her a picture of that, and she was really moved by that. And she asked if she could do my makeup one time. And so she did. And it got me kind of internalizing and thinking about who and what I was. And over the next, say, year and a half, I actually ventured out into the world. And I began to go to shows and dinner and just do my daily life as Sibila. And that's how I got started on my road.
Now, here's the thing, because people, they get the opportunity to experience this basically at parties, but then real life comes in. Do you know what I'm saying? Life, we want life to be a party every day. It would be nice if it was, especially in this day and age. We need a big party. But when you think about stepping outside of that zone of who you are right now, walking down the street, was there any type of fear? I mean, you live in another country, and I don't know what it's like outside of the United States. Do you understand what I'm saying? There are many people that can speculate what it is to live in another country, but you're not going to know until you're physically there. So did you have any fears of what it was going to be like to walk down the street fully dressed with makeup? What was that like? Was it liberating? Was it scary? Was it both?
I would have to say it was both. So my experience with the Moroccan equation has actually been more positive than the American one, as far as the sense of empowerment I get from family and passerbys. And as I'm living in Baltimore now, in Maryland, I would have to say that it was a little bit more, not difficult, but I ran into more abrasion here. But to be honest with you, it's never been difficult for me. I've never really had any issues with people in public that went beyond your typical misogynistic male behavior. To be honest with you, it did not seem to be based on me being trans or anything. I don't really care if people look or anything like that. So the first time I went out, I would say I kept a little bit more to myself, but I was having so much fun by being out as a woman for really, honestly, the first time. And I went to a burlesque show. And
those are always fun.
Right, and the dancers and the pinup models, there was a pinup competition there. They got such a kick out of me, and I was wearing a pinup dress with polka dots and everything. The woman that was my friend that I went with, she gave me some of her vintage purse and jacket to wear. So it was, it was really nice to kind of throw myself out there into such an environment and experience what it was like to walk the world as a woman. So it wasn't really terrifying. It was exciting. There was some anxiety, certainly, to overcome, like, how do I look? What do I look like? How people interact with me. But generally speaking, women just pick up with me very easily. I've never really had a problem with that. And men tend to extend to me, usually, the same courtesies, the good ones, that they would extend to a genetic woman.
But the beautiful thing about you, and that's not to say that not everybody else is beautiful, is that you embrace both sides. You don't turn around and say, well, I'm this or I'm that, where some people are strictly what it is that they feel in that moment or for their lifespan, whatever that may be. And you embrace both sides of your world. Do you find conflict with that with other people? Because sometimes on social media, you'll see people arguing about fluidity, about trans life, transgender, you're this, you're that, you can't be this, you can't be that. Like, how do you respond to people like that? What do you think to yourself when you see people arguing about something that, I don't know, maybe it should be a simplistic solution?
Yeah, definitely should. The solution is very simple, and that's just to let people do what they want to do. And identifying yourself, expressing yourself does absolutely no harm to anyone else. In fact, it brings more to the world. And as a more complete person, you're a healthier person for other people to interact with. So certainly it's no danger to anyone, even though they do treat it that way, because it does not go against the conventional patriarchal and religious norms that are established in many different cultures, from mine to America to Germany, wherever. Um, but I have not had too much conflict. Obviously, you get a few idiots on Instagram and TikTok who are not worth mentioning. They're just trolls, as they would say, and it's not that big a deal. But the overwhelming support that I have gotten from people I don't know, just my followers, my fans, that's always been very charming. It's been very empowering. In my personal life, especially from my Moroccan side, I never actually went in and told the matriarch of our family about Sibila. I did not ask her also for permission to use our name, Bakzaza, because it's a well-established name in Tamasra. But one day, the oldest male in our family, his name is Lahsen Bakzaza. He's in his mid-70s. He messaged me on Instagram en français, and he basically said to me, he said, to translate it, he said, "My dear, my sweet, you look so magnificent. You look like the true queens of the Berber people." That's all he ever said. I never talked to him. I never came out to him. Nothing. He came across Sybilla Bakzaza because the name Bakzaza, and he saw that it was the same as Sean, my male name, and he realized, oh, wow, it's the same person, and he was so proud of me. And he's Muslim. I do not practice Islam. I don't consider myself Muslim. Most of my family is, but all of the Muslims in my family are extremely proud of who I am. The girls, the boys, the women, the men, they all love who I am.
You see, now you've just changed the dynamic of the conversation. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because the Muslim faith has gotten such a bad rap over the years. A lot of people believe that due to that faith, they think that men can go around and rape women, mistreat women, mistreat gay people. They have a hate for homosexuality. And when I used to make 12-step meetings and I knew that people had turned their life over to Islam and Allah, they were not people the way society depicts what they believe the Islamic faith is, or to be a Muslim. Now, somebody else that I know very, very well practices the Muslim faith, and she's also into BDSM. So when you say that certain religions don't allow certain lifestyles, what do you say about that? Do you think that society is not very well versed in understanding what religion means personally to a person that's practicing it, regardless of what they do on the outside?
That's a fantastic question. I love that question. So the two faiths I like to bring up when it comes to transphobia, homophobia, and the mistreatment of women are Islam and Catholicism. I have studied in depth with theologians in the Wahhabi as well as the Catechism. I'm going to quote Surah 223-2 from the Holy Quran, which says that a man shall go forth with a woman and do with her as he would with his tillage. This is the root problem of the interpretation of what to do towards women. The misogyny is based on this one surah. So you asked the question, is it how well people are versed? Absolutely. it's not just the people's ignorance on the mass scale, the mob, as the Romans would say, but it's also it is institutions like the Vatican and the parish and the Wahhabi in Islam and the emirs that rule the royal family in Al Saudi, Saudi Arabia, who pick and choose quotes and force an interpretation through their military and spiritual power that shape their societies. So we are not dealing with religious issues as much as the cultures that practice them, that abuse them. So the Surah 223-2, the thing about that surah, man shall do with his woman as he shall do with his tillage. So tillage is your farm. That's what that means. Now that does not sound so good, but at the same time, what is a farmer supposed to do with his farm? He is supposed to nurture his soil. He is supposed, and it's what it sounds like. He is supposed to plow his field with care. In other words, he is supposed to take care of her sexual and romantic needs. He is supposed to plant his seed. He is supposed to water it. He is supposed to plant flowers. He is supposed to harvest it. He is supposed to do all of the dirty work. He is supposed to work the soil with his hands. Without his farm, in the desert, you will die. And the other thing is the Quran was actually written by a woman, because Muhammad, and I will flat out say that, is an illiterate bum. I mean, he really is. I mean, he's a homeless dude who can't pay his bills. He cannot read or write, and he has a lot of enemies. And he is saved by Khadija, my mother's name actually, who shapes Islam. So the opportunity for matriarchy was there. But the cultures of the Arabs in the Arab states have always been preclusive of female involvement, but not in their ancient times. It is modern misogyny that has come along and shaped how religion is used. In the Catechism, the Vatican law, it actually says that you cannot excommunicate, and cannot harass a homosexual, because here's the thing: if a Christian agrees that everyone is made by God and that God makes no mistakes, then how can you come along and say that homosexuality is a mistake? So there were 3 successive popes in the 1500s that said that if God makes someone homosexual, it's part of its plan. Now, where is that reasoning today in either faith? So again, I'm not saying these religions are great. I'm not saying these religions do not have problems. They have problems, or we would not be faced with misogyny and transphobia and homophobia today. They did not do a good enough job of teaching lessons to their followers. They did not have enough laws laid down in stone to preach harmony. And so unfortunately, you end up with power-hungry people who come along and they pick and choose which surah, which mantra they want to follow, and they use that to subjugate.
So basically, it is mankind, so to speak, humankind, that take these different passages and then they just interpret it to what they think it says, and then they go and they spread it around to everybody else, which is what they're spreading is misinformation. And we see it all the time on social media. I mean, people will just blow up certain situations. For example, this poor man who passed away, Chadwick. Oh God.
The actor.
Yes. And
Chadwick Boseman.
Right. Thank you. See, this is why that's why I need a producer. And I didn't know who he was, but clearly looking at videos of him in the past, he looks like he's sick. And then people were chastising him for like weight loss and things of that nature. And I'm saying to myself, can't you see that he is not well? Like, why would somebody deliberately want to look like that? The loss of color. I mean, you saw that he didn't have that glow anymore on his face because cancer drains you. You're going through all these treatments to keep you alive. You're not going to look like you did 4 or 5 or even 6 months ago. Do you know what I'm saying?
Of course, yeah.
So for anyone to think that certain passages of these biblical books they could just interpret it and say, well, this is what it means. Um, how do we begin to break that stigma? I mean, I'm not saying for people to not practice religion. What I can't stand is when people try to force religion down my throat. It's like, don't do that to me. Don't make choices for me, because there are different types of faiths that I believe in. I just take a little bit of everything. Do you know what I mean? But
Of
I don't
course.
want to be just one thing. I don't want to practice just one religion. So how do we begin to break the stigma? Sometimes you feel like the the people that have the misinformation for some reason seem to have the bigger voice. How do we come forth and be the bigger voice of society and start learning to respect people's lives and their lifestyle choices?
That's a fantastic question. So the first thing to realize, I think, that the people who practice their religion is what was written thousands of years ago was written for a time which no longer exists. And although it has a bearing on how we have developed anthropologically, culturally today, we have to
Mhm.
realize these religions were written in what is by comparison, maybe not spiritually, maybe not literarily, but in technological and social times, a much more primitive time period. We're
Right.
talking about Romans and ancient Greeks and the ancient Egyptians. What happened then? The social issues they had then, while they have some similarity and bearing on today, they were in a different crisis than we are today. They were in much more of a spiritual crisis. We have developed a spiritual social crisis that we have today. And the bottom line is whenever you practice a religion of any kind, take the aspects of it that have love and acceptance and empowerment of your fellow woman, your fellow man, and practice those. If your religion is saying that you should have stigma or dogma which precludes someone based on their gender, their orientation, their race, their nationality, this religion, this component of your religion needs to go. Religion, like human beings, has to grow, it has to modernize. So why are we following dogma that is in some cases in some of the faiths that are practiced today over 3,000 years old? Why are we practicing dogma from a time period of which we have no clue what it was like to live in?
Right.
These religions, first off, were all written when there was slavery, like
Hmm.
rampant slavery. And of course, there's
Hmm.
still slavery in the world today. That's why you and I have gotten to know each other to fight sex trafficking. But the point is, there was an actual economic institution of slavery. There were wars fought over the smallest provocations. Things like murder and rape were not prosecuted in the same, and yet this is where these religions evolved from. So the people who practice them, we have to stop acting like we're in the Stone Age, because we're not anymore. We have to modernize our faith. And maybe it's time to have a modern review of the ancient religions.
Hey everyone, it's Marabelle Blue. Are you interested in being the next person to be interviewed on KEM Top Talk interviews and discussions? Contact Kink E Magazine at gmail.com and let's set up your next interview. And remember, it's Kink E with an E. Thanks for watching. So I wanted to bring up that I interviewed another person not too long ago who's also very, very much involved with the with different organizations of sex trafficking, and how these other organizations that claim they are helping the sex trafficker, but what they're doing is they're taking these victims. We want to know them as survivors. We don't like calling people victims because in the organization of the Cupcake Girls, which I don't know if you heard the news that I'm now part of their partner program doing the
Oh,
business.
wonderful. I did
So
not know that. That's wonderful.
I'm gonna
You
have
bring
my
that
first.
energy. That's wonderful. That's perfect. You're a perfect fit for them.
I'm so excited. I'm going to have my first free Zoom class next month. So look out for those details because I want you to be there.
Of
And
course.
the idea is that, well, just what I'm going to be doing with them is doing business coaching, my business enterprise coaching, where I will help empowering people in understanding the logistics of business management. which which is what we need. A lot of people have great ideas and they want to start their own businesses, but they don't know how. They don't know how to go by the steps. And sometimes you can't tell everybody all of your ideas because you don't know if somebody's going to come out and have money and then try and execute that idea and take away from you. This is the reason why a lot of the times I don't discuss major projects. Like, remember I told you yesterday I'm working on something major, and it gets very scary to share because not you per se, but just people in general that I've had experiences with that just try and run with the idea. But getting back to the topic at hand, as far as empowering people is concerned, you have organizations that use these women or men. I mean, you don't see a lot of men that are being sex trafficked unless they're for some other reason. You just don't hear about it. I don't hear about it. However, you have these organizations that use these people and basically victimize them more. Do you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And trying to bring down the adult industry. Well, if it wasn't for Pornhub, or if it wasn't for any of these adult sites, if it wasn't for camming, they wouldn't be in this position. And wouldn't you agree that people want to be part of the sex industry because that's what they like to do? Do you know what I'm saying? So why take away from someone that enjoys doing things or performing on camera and separate the two from the people that are being victimized? Now you have these different organizations that are just victimizing them more. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a legitimate business, and there are people that, I mean, I've come to know. I've had conversations with women like Romy Rain, Sabina Rouge, Dr. Lovejoy, Bratty Nikki, King Lexa, of course, and they have passion. They have an intelligence about their business. These are some empowered, tycoon level business women. They know what they're doing. They're in the profession, that they can apply their passion, their business sense, their financial responsibilities. They can reap benefits from this. There's nothing wrong with the industry, definitely. And I like the fact that there's a review being performed against sex trafficking to find out who's been forced into it, obviously. But when it comes to the legitimacy of the industry, it's a booming business. I mean, to be blunt, everyone's masturbating. Everyone's going on there and taking a look at least one time in their life. And don't tell me it's been one time. I mean, it's a healthy way to explore your own sexuality, to explore what it is you expect of yourself and your partners. And the workers that are involved in the industry, as long as they are empowering each other, not harming one another, it's a wonderful business. So rather than slut shaming, as they say, and further victimizing survivors, there should simply be the review that is being performed. What we are trying to do with Cupcake Girls and Bigger Than Sex, where we are trying to identify the harmful elements of the sex industry and excise that from the rest of the nation, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I wanted to just show that if you want to be part of the Bigger Than Sex movement, just giving them a plug, they're right here on twitter.com/bigger than sex. Donate to the cause because it is helping a lot of people. And then, of course, now being part of the Cupcake Girls, that I will be offering my business coaching because I have 63 credits, so I might as well put them to good use. I keep saying that. But
Love the Cupcake Girls, just for the record. Love that
shout out to the
organization.
Cupcake Girls. um so moving forward with this type of disturbance of these different types of organizations, um would you say that a lot of these organizations are like on the inside promoting their religious concept of, because this is what I've seen. And not only that too, but one of the things that this particular young lady has brought up is how they represent um the sex trafficking. Like, you'll see, she made a comment about seeing dark hands over a white girl's mouth as to say that the darker people are the problem.
Right.
And why why would these organizations do something like that? Because it's not a matter of the color of the person. Because again, when you do things like that, that's when you start tying religion into it. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't know if somebody had brought up the Islamic faith into this, but then you start thinking, well, I don't think that way because I actually have brains. But the thing is that they're putting this information out there, um, that certain religions are tied with what is going on with sex trafficking. True or false?
It's absolutely true. And one of the reasons for the reason they're tying their faith is whenever someone has a weak argument and you question them, they always say, yeah, but I did the research. And what better way to validate yourself than by saying God said that, or it's in the Bible, or it's in the Quran, or it's a holier than thou kind of attitude. So it's that self-validation of a weak mind with a weak position who immediately cannot fall back on their logic or their research or their facts. So they
Mhm.
have to say that it's religion.
So basically, you're saying it's true that they are blaming the religion, but it's not the actual religion's fault that sex trafficking is happening.
Exactly. I mean, I cannot recall a passage in any of the major texts that says go out and rape, go out and subjugate, go out and sex traffic. I can't recall one. And yet you have
Neither
these
can I.
cultures, right? And you know the people who are doing this, they're still going to the mosque and they're still going to church on Sunday and they're still giving money. So I
Yeah.
mean, it's a complete conflict. Again, these are human flaws. That's the thing. We are not holy creatures. We are not gods. So
Mhm.
it's a human shortcoming. That's what the issue is.
I mean, I find it scary at the fact that these are the same people, like you said. They will go to the mosque, they will go to church every Sunday, and they would talk about loving people unconditionally. But then they're part of these organizations where they're out to harm the very people in the adult world. Like they are doing something wrong, like they are the ones to blame for sex trafficking. And it's two entirely different things: sex trafficking, human trafficking, whatever it is that you want to call it. The fact of the matter is, how can the adult entertainment industry now stand up to these false accusations that it's not an individual's fault, it's not a group's fault for these things that are happening in our world today?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, little shout out to Dr. Lovejoy over on I Want Radio. One of the first shows I listened to, I can't remember her last name. Her name was Lindsay. She was an adult star that was on the show, and she talked about some of the male performers that violate the female performers in the adult industry.
Mhm.
So that's the thing. The adult industry is changing, I hope, and I can see it. The actions speak louder than the words, of course, where they're
Mhm.
starting to shed light on the people who are not safe to work with. They're starting to bring awareness to people who have been wrongfully forced into a sex entertainment, you can call it that at that point, lifestyle. So that's the thing. The conversation being open, the light being shown onto the people that need to be kicked out. People like Ron Jeremy, for instance,
Mhm.
Sebastian, what's his name? These guys have recently been brought to light by female performers who have said enough is enough. It's a shame it took so long. Better late than never, of course, but that's what we need to do in the adult industry. We need to take over as women and as empowered men, good chivalrous men, take over the adult industry, make it our own, and make sure that we are the ones calling the scenes and the shots. Like Romy Reigns said, I set my own time schedule. I call my own shots. I don't work with someone if I don't like them. And she doesn't want her girls to think that if you show up on a set and you know something about that guy, you're not comfortable with how he's touching you, you think he's being too rough.
Mhm.
You don't need to think you're going to be blacklisted by saying we need to slow down or I can't work with him. So the second technique is changing to be slightly more female empowered society. And why not? Most of the sex industry is female. It should be owned by women.
I agree. I mean, it's just like I've been doing my magazine since 2002, and still there are times that I find that men will try and mimic what it is that I'm doing because they think they're going to meet women, especially if they're single. And
Definitely. It's a
they
dating platform for them.
yeah, they think that they're going to be like the next Hugh Hefner. And it's like, it's not going to happen because there's a reason I started the magazine in the first place was because I wanted to give a platform to people able to express themselves. That was the whole point. It wasn't about me, Marabelle Blue, kinky man. If that was the case, then I would have named it that, correct?
Of
And
course.
it wasn't about that. It really was about giving people a place to be able to express themselves and not feel judged behind it. And I mean, look at where we're at now. We're doing like video interviews where I actually get to communicate with people and say, I want to hear your voice. I want to hear what you have to say, because there are other people that are also going to want to hear what you have to say as well. I know that when we were talking offline, you had brought up some stuff about the military and things that go on there. What has been your experience with that?
In regards to like the trans equation or women's empowerment?
Let's do both.
Okay, so let's start off with the trans issue, the trans military ban that Trump and Pence have tried to institute, which is being voted against now. They're trying to repeal the pressures that they put on it. So one of the things that happens in the military, we study this as officers, is something that's called groupthink or clan mentality. Basically, it is whatever social stigma and norm is established by the most alpha male becomes the manly way to behave. Sometimes it's chivalrous, sometimes it's misogynistic or transphobic. So people in the military are not empowered to be pro-trans. They're embarrassed or ridiculed for being that way. Now, when I was in the Navy and I was around the Marines, I spent more time with the Marines than sailors. I was very vocal. I was very pro-trans, very pro-woman. And I got conversations going. I was a division commander. At one point, I had over 400 people assigned to me, but generally speaking, it's just about 120. And people felt like they could ask questions for the first time. So I really did not have any direct problems. There were some strange questions, but I mean, you have to answer them or they will not be empowered to ask again. But for the most part, my experience was positive. But the reality of the military is very transphobic. It's very misogynistic. It's a very pro-patriarchal, male-dominated profession. But what it requires is leaders to set a clan environment that is healthy, to empowering and open for an open discussion. If you can do that, the military would be a lot better. But right now we have a so-called commander-in-chief and his bitch vice president that have begun to empower people to be openly anti-gay, anti-trans, and misogynistic. We have guys that are putting in a trans ban. We have a president that says grab her by the pussy, things like that. It's going to trickle down the ladder, and we're going to get more jarheads, essentially, and gravel crunchers that start acting like beasts, rather than as professional sailors and Marines. So, yes, it is a problem in the military. Some of the best sailors, Marines that I have ever known have been trans. I knew an FMS corpsman who was a trans woman, fantastic sailor, saved lives, was a great woman. But right now, it's a bad time to be trans in the U.S. military. It really is.
See, that's scary because I say to myself, and maybe this is just a normal question that everybody should be asking, but why is it that we've come to a place where we judge people for the choices that they make of how they want to be, trans, woman, man, whatever the case may be, and because of that they don't have the logic to save us, or they don't have the logic to be a firefighter. And I'm saying, well, what's the difference if they want to be a firefighter and they consider themselves trans? why can they not save my life? You know what I mean? It's like, that doesn't make any sense to me. So because they're trans, they can't save my life? Like, somebody explain that logic to me, because to me, it doesn't make any sense. How could they not want to, or not save my life because they're trans? You know what I mean? It's just like, it doesn't fly with me, because I'm still looking at them as a human being who wants to aspire in a certain career or wants to serve their country. So what's the problem?
Yeah, so back in 1963, that's when the trans legislation ban went into effect. It was like U.S. Army's legislation number 40 or something like that. But it was 1963. They put that in, and under the ruling, the U.S. Army. It's always the U.S. Army. It's the I hate them so much. Let's go on the record. Sybilla hates the Army. But anyway, so in 1963, the Army's psychologists found out that if you are trans, then you are mentally impaired and cannot make good decisions involving combat and human life. That's what they said.
How does one come to this conclusion? And it's only one person, or was it the whole association that came to agreement with that? Did he write a paper on it? I mean,
that's a great question. So we can't answer that, I don't think. But here's the thing. Imagine being a psychiatrist, psychologist, and you come out in 1963 and you tell the DOD trans people are psychologically qualified. The answer is going to be fire him, find someone new. And when you have new psychologists coming in, you're going to pretty much, when at the federal level, psychiatry and the military is a bad mixture. It's still evolving. They're learning how to deal with veterans. But when it comes to the fear of a psychologist that your average veteran has, there's some unreasonable fear and there's some reasonable fear. The reasonable fear is that the psychological services and the DOD are looking to disqualify you. They are not looking to validate you. I was almost disqualified for answering from service while I was on active duty, because they were ascertaining what kind of a leader I was. And they asked me, do you believe in yourself? I said, yes. Do you think that you can find solutions in the face of failure and adversity? And I said, yes. So they classified me as a narcissist and recommended my termination from duty.
What? Oh my God.
A civilian doctor, of course. And they reviewed me with another civilian doctor who said, this is stupid, basically. And it turned out that doctor, he was a psychologist. He had been the student of Dr. Norman Brown, and I was also one of Dr. Norman Brown's students. So that worked out well for me. But that's the problem, is that when you're trans in the military, they, first off, you just as a bit of advice to any of you who want to serve, they're going to ask you a question when you're recruited. Have you ever been sad? You have to say no. I've been happy my whole life. Just Gomer Pyle, okay? Be Mickey Mouse. You have to be Gomer Pyle or Mickey Mouse. That's the perfect American. They always want you to act like that. But if you say you're sad, then they classify you with chronic depression and they disqualify you from service. So when you're trans and you want to rely on your guidance counselors, you want to talk to a doctor, they will open you up and they will peel you apart, and you will say things like, well, it's been difficult for me in my transition, but being in the military, it's really empowering. Really, what's difficult about that? They say, well, some people, they don't accept me in my command. Next thing you know, they're recommending termination from service for dysphoric issues. So being trans in the military is all about being quiet and being hush-hush and trying to fit in. But that's the point. When I joined Special Warfare to become a Navy SEAL, they did not recruit me because I was blonde, blue-eyed, and pale. The first question they asked me, what color are your eyes? I said, brown. What color is your hair? I said, brown. Can you tan? I said, yes. They said, okay, good. We like you. The reason is because Special Warfare is built on diversity. That's the best way. It's not about fighting your enemy only. It's about understanding your enemy and actually trying to make peace with them. And the only way to do that is by having people who understand diversity and culture. But for your general Department of Defense, your average soldier, airman, sailor, whatever, it's about conformity. And the trans equation does not fit with their idea of the ideal soldier.
The magic word, conformity. I hate that word. That That was never me, not ever, ever, ever. And I think this is the reason why I just couldn't work in an office because, uh, you know, everything would be fine in the beginning. And then when they realize that I guess I'm some kind of free thinker, they start incorporating these unrealistic rules in a corporate environment to make it difficult for people so that they're not allowed to think freely because they don't want that in corporate America. They just want you to follow the trend, keep your mouth shut, and come into work, do everything that we're telling you, whether we're right or wrong. Um, it's whatever. And it's really, really bad. And terrible that somebody would automatically assume that if you say you're sad, that you're depressed. We are allowed to be sad. We are allowed to be happy. We're allowed to be angry. I mean,
Exactly.
how
These are
many
all
times?
healthy emotions. Yeah.
Yes, how many
The worst
times?
the worst part about that is the lack of empowerment. So I averaged 2.1 hours of sleep when I was a division commander a night. I went over 22 hours a day for 3 weeks straight. And what I would do is I would walk the watch. I would stand on almost every watch. I'd put on my uniform. I would go walking, and inevitably some young woman, some young man would say, "Arpak, can I talk to you?" I'd be like, "Of course, what's going on?" Because I knew the psychiatric services, the medical services, who are at the mercy of
Mhm.
DOD mandate. So it's not the doctors only to blame; it's the military regime and culture. But imagine if you have people who are making missiles, carrying
Mhm.
guns, guarding
Mhm.
prisoners, blowing things up, who are not allowed to express their sadness. You're sitting on time bombs. So before you know it, Marines and sailors are expressing themselves with suicide
Mhm.
because they have no one to talk to, because they know if they talk to someone saying, "Hey, I'm having a problem," that they're going to get processed for termination. And then you get a medical discharge instead of an honorable discharge.
Hmm.
And that can affect your finances later in life. So there's so much pressure on the culture, whether it's just mental health or just being trans, being a woman or a man in the military. They do not promote open forum.
Mhm.
Now, individual officers, chiefs, and sergeants, they will. If you say, "Hey, chief, hey, gunnery sergeant, I'm having a bad day. I need to talk to someone," the gunny or the chief, they'll pull you aside and say, "Hey, what's going on? What's going on?" And you can say, "Well, I'm having problems with my wife, or I'm going bankrupt. My dog just died. Whatever." They'll be like, "Oh, that's terrible. We actually have a class on marital counseling. You should go to that." Or, "Hey, there's a financial class I'm running next week. Why don't you come to that?" Or, "You know what? I have a friend in the K9 unit, and they're trying to adopt a shepherd out. Maybe you should meet this dog." No, the individuals in the military do want to help, but their hands are tied by law. These laws are not reflective of women's and trans empowerment.
Hmm. I mean, it's just when I think that things are starting to get better, then I'm talking to someone and saying, I must be living under a rock because it's still scary that there's still this level of ignorance that's happening in our world today. So, with all that being said, somebody out here, somebody out in this world, or some bodies, they're going to be watching this video and they're going to have the same feelings that you have of being trans and wanting to express themselves, or being gender fluid, whatever it is that they feel inside. Where can they honestly go? Who can they talk to where they can get real help? Because remember, I mean, you're talking about back in the 60s. It's not like we had the internet, you
Right, of
know?
course. Yeah.
It's not like back in New York when the AIDS epidemic happened and we had the gay men's health crisis. There wasn't that back then, but there are so many resources now. So, under your advisement, what do you recommend?
So the first thing to do, I think you have to find that one friend that just loves you for you. and talk to them. You need to be able to admit yourself to someone. It's a liberating feeling to come out and just say to someone, so I'm this. This is who I am. And if you get that one friend that can empower you, your next step, I think, is to explore whatever gender role or even lack of gender role that you like to exhibit. Now, professionally, medically, definitely. Let's take advantage of technology. Let's get on Google. Find out what your local trans resource centers are. In Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, there's actually a medical practice that is catering to the LGBTQ plus community. Chase Brexton down in Baltimore is a great trans and non-binary. It's in fact their lead psychologist is non-binary. Fantastic Fox on Instagram. Reach out to these people, reach out to their practices, and find out about counseling sessions. You do need to talk to someone about it. You absolutely do, because if the only thing you get by talking is acknowledgement of who you are, then you have accomplished something, and you can definitely avail yourself of their services. Alder Health is the one in Harrisburg. Our producer, she knows off the top of her head, she's in psychology, actually, in gender studies. So, which is serendipitous. So I imagine you have a lot to say on gender resources. And if you want to throw anything in, please, if you have anything you want to add to that, just flag me. So again, go on the internet and find out what your local trans resource centers are. There were places where you can get counseling services. You may have to go through your doctor initially if you're actual transitioning to get referrals. But I've known people who have hit a brick wall with their doctor who don't want to help them. Not all doctors are great, and that's why something like Chase Brexton, all their services, you can start with them, whether you have Medicare or your own, company policy or whatever, like Premier Blue Cross, whatever, that you can get access to counseling services. It depends on the level of transitioning that you're talking about, but I think the number one thing is get involved with groups, like group talk, get involved with a counselor and a friend that can empower you to seek yourself.
Agree. I mean, you said a mouthful today, because now we're like at the end of the interview. Oh no, I didn't want
I know,
to
it's
end.
always the sad part. Because for me, this is like a hangout session with you. I get to spend time with Lady Marabella. I mean, it's great.
I love it. And I'm telling you, I mean, it's like we can definitely dive into other topics for this episode, like future episodes. You know what I mean? I think it's spectacular. So, with all that being said, now that we are nearing the end of the show, are there any other comments or any other points that you want to bring up before we come to our end?
Yeah, of course. You had actually, it was one of the pre-show questions you had for me, and that was, do I feel like it's becoming easier to be gender fluid or trans, or more difficult? My honest answer is things are getting better. But whenever there is change, those who oppose it, when they reach their bitter end, they squeak louder, they shriek louder, they are on their dying leg. The transphobic community is so disempowered today. You're risking alienation with your employer. You're risking alienation on your social media. If you're bigoted in any way, the majority of people, I feel, are not going to hold you in any kind of regard or respect. But it's so loud, the voice of misogyny and racism and transphobia today, of bigotry in general, because of the regime that we live under, because we have a president that has empowered those people to speak their vile words. So I would say to the trans community out there, keep your head up, and to women who everyone deserves empowerment, and men as well, keep your head up. We are making progress. We are definitely taking a huge step forward. But our opposition is on their last leg, and they're going to fight us with everything they have left. And it's a very small voice, and we do not have to listen to it. All we have to do is continue to be ourselves and act against their pathetic position.
Those are some great words. I love that. It's very, very inspiring. And I think it's a great way to end the show because it gives so much hope to people out there that we're not fighting for the fun of it, that we are making progress, and that in numbers we become stronger and we become one loud voice, that we are not going to tolerate
Exactement.
any hate, any disdain, whatever that may be, that we will be able to truly live as we see fit. And I love that. And thank you so much for being on this episode of KEM Top Talk Interviews and Discussions. I really, um, I am, I'm excited.
It was my honor. Je vous en prie. Thank you so much for
Goosebumps.
having me too. I mean, thank you for the questions. Thank you for the platform and love your show, of course. So thanks again, Marabella.
Thank you. Thank you. So, with all that being said, thank you, Sybilla, for being on the show. And as always, be good to each other, be good to yourself, and most importantly, take care of you. Bye, everybody.